Thank you all for joining us for Across the Spectrum Parent Support Group. We try to bring you guys some ideas through some different types of presentations to hopefully give you a little bit more information about parenting, hopefully things that will going to help you parent your child both now during COVID and into the future. So today we're going to be talking about 5 steps to prepare for your online IEP meeting. Pretty much across the state of Florida and beyond. Schools are holding IEP meetings, that's the individual education plan. They're having these meetings online. And if I had to put a wager down, I would say that even after kids are back in school full time, that online IEPs will be an option for parents. I'm hoping that it doesn't move to something that is just basically this is how we do things, because there is a huge amount of benefit to being able to be in the same physical space as those who are guiding your child's education. So for those parents who have a really hard time making it to IEP meetings because of work, or maybe younger children at home, or maybe you care for someone else outside of the home during the day, this is going to be a really good thing, I think, for you, because you'll be able to participate in the IEP meetings where maybe before you didn't, maybe before you just told the school, just have it without me. I've got too much on my plate. So this might be a nice option for you because you'll be able to be part of the team. But for those who can be to your IEP meetings, please continue to do so. I think that that's really vitally important because so many things happen at the table. In today's situation where everybody is in their own space. So the people who are in school, you'll see a lot of times the teacher's in the classroom, the person running the meeting is in an office, and maybe a therapist is from her home, you guys from your home, so everybody's in a different physical space. So when we come together in the meeting, we're all coming together in the meeting. The one thing that I caution just to watch for in the future is if the team at the school is getting together in the same space, but you are not, you can very easily not be as big a part of that meeting as you should be, because people will mute their phones and conversation will take place that maybe you're not a part of. So you just need to be really cautious of that as we move forward and meetings begin to be taking place in schools, more kids come back into school. Just got to be really careful with that. So these are just 5 things that I think would be really good for you as you prepare for your online IEP meetings. So just so that you guys know, the only thing that's supposed to change is the location. Nothing else about the IEP should change. Your rights remain intact under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So a lot of people call it IDEA. Some people might actually say IDEA, but that is the law that protects you and your children in the rights that you have to a free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. And so that means that, the schools are mandated under federal law to develop a plan that meets your child's needs and gives them an appropriate education. That does not mean bottom of the barrel, we're only going to do what's absolutely necessary, but that means that your child should be making progress in school, meaningful progress in school. So if you find that your child's not making meaningful progress, it's time to have conversations with them about you knowing your rights, and that free and appropriate public education does not mean what a Supreme Court justice referred to as de minimis, which is basically the bottom of what they absolutely have to provide. So the one thing I want you to know that as you guys are attending and participating, hopefully, in your online IEP meetings, you should not accept or even expect the staff to cut services just because we're in COVID. Again, there has been absolutely no waiver on your rights from the Federal Department of Education in Washington. This is from the very beginning of COVID and the pandemic. There has never been a moment where, the administration has said, okay, no, don't worry about it. We're in COVID. So your rights remain intact. So I think that's really important for you to know. So if you do have your child in a school that says, well, it's COVID, so we're going to have to cut these services. No, 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 no. Now, If your team, which includes you, decides, you know what, they're doing so awesome, they don't really need speech therapy 5 days a week, maybe 4 days a week or 3 days a week, you guys can have that conversation. So if that's the case, then yes. But they shouldn't be saying, well, we're in COVID, so we're going to cut services. So don't take that. Do your research. You guys should know and understand as much as you can about your child's disability and their needs. There's tons of resources around the state of Florida when it comes to autism. You could check in with the Autism Society of Florida. We have resources. You could check out our website at www.autismfl.org. And on there is going to be hopefully some helpful advice. This video will be there. This video will also be on our YouTube channel. So scour around through our YouTube channel. We also have podcasts on Apple and Google and Spotify, so you can see us there. But you want to be tapped in to as much information as you can possibly gain. You need to understand your rights under IDEA. There's a little book that you sign every year at your child's annual IEP meeting. It's called the Procedural Safeguards. In that book, you got to know what it says in that book, because in that book, it tells you what your rights are. It tells you that if you are in disagreement with the school, you actually have a right to a certain process. So that could mean due process. That could mean local conflict resolution. That could mean state mediation. You can file a state complaint. There are a variety of different things that you have on your side as you move forward to make sure that your child gets that free and appropriate public education. I always suggest that parents have a parent-teacher conference before the IEP meeting. And that's not just now that we're in COVID, but that's any time. I dislike it when we're sitting at an IEP table and the educator slips the parent-teacher conference form across the table to the parent. I really don't think that you can be as enmeshed into the decisions that are being made for your child if you're only getting information from the teacher when you show up for an annual or an interim IEP meeting. So that means having those conversations with the teacher. Ask for data. They are required to keep data on all of your child's IEP goals, the way that they learn, what they're learning, how they're learning, if they're showing progress, if they're not. So they have to keep data. So if they're not keeping data, maybe you should let them know that they're actually required to keep data. But you want to see the data. Don't just show up at your kid's IEP meeting and you're reading the same thing maybe as you were reading last year. That's not supposed to happen. Every year, children should grow and change and develop. And if you're seeing those same goals year after year, or if you're reading a present level that sounds pretty much like it was the previous year, something is broken. So you want to make sure that you have that information. So here we go. Read your old IEP and the draft of the new one and compare them. So you should be getting a draft, hopefully. If you're not getting a draft of the new IEP before the IEP meeting, just ask them. Ask them if they will send you a draft home a couple days before the meeting. That way kids are in bed, it's quiet at the end of the day, you can sit down, pull out last year's IEP, kind of lay it out there, open up the draft, and look at the two present levels of performance. First, you want to see if they're the same, because they should not be. But then they are also required to include assessment data within the present level. So you're going to go back to the previous one and look to see, okay, so what was Johnny doing? How did he score on the certain assessment? And then hopefully they ran the same assessment the next year so that you can compare apples to apples. Now, if that's not the case and it's two different assessments, you want to ask why. And if it's a valid response, so you could be okay with that. But you can also say, well, you know what? I really want to be able to tell if he made the progress that it seems like he might have made. So can you guys go ahead and run whatever the assessment was from last year? Doesn't necessarily have to, it's not going to happen there at the table because they're going to have to go back and assess your child, but something that you can get, and then you can ask for an amendment to be made to the IEP. Well, they'll just, after the fact, where they'll just go ahead and put that in there. You definitely want to see a different child each year, and that has nothing to do with the challenges that your child might face related to their disability. Every child has the ability to make progress, and it is the responsibility of the school system to figure out what it is that your child needs in order to get them there. So you definitely want to always see progress in your child. All right, so before the IEP meeting, make sure that your device is charged and that you have good Wi-Fi access. I've been part of so many IEP meetings where the parent loses Wi-Fi or they're coming in and out and they're missing part of the meeting. So it may seem like duh, but it happens a lot. So if that's you, you want to make sure that you are charged up and really that you have a backup plan. So if something happens, how are you going to get back in? The school should send you a link a couple days before. It could actually be a few minutes before if you're okay with that. They'll send you the link. You should just be clicking on it and it takes you right into the platform. So that shouldn't be too much of a challenge. So hopefully you're getting that in a timely fashion. So make sure that they have good information on how to contact you, your cell phone number, your house number, if you still have a landline like me, email, and any way that they can get in touch with you in case something happens that's a little off the rails. Write your parent input before the IEP meeting and email it to the ESE specialist. Now, you don't, or whoever it is that runs your meeting. You don't have to if you don't want to email it to them in advance, but I want you to write it in advance. And then you can make changes to it during the meeting. But if you are not sure about, like if you want to give it to them before the meeting, you don't have to. You could let them know, you know what, I'm going to hold off till the end. And then you can just shoot it in an email over to the person running your meeting. They can copy it and paste it in there, and then you're good to go. You don't want to wait till the meeting because a lot of times, you know, as parents, our heads go off on tangents because if they just said that, you know, your kid had a rough morning or they're really not attending during the online learning, you might be a little bit more consumed about that than you are about your parent input. So it's good to write it when you have clarity of thought, where you're not feeling stressed or anxious like a lot of parents do during an IEP meeting. So you want to be able to send that to them. But like I said, whether it's in advance or the day of the meeting, it's fine, but it's easier to do that. The other thing is that a lot of time when I'm in the meeting and will ask for something to be added to the parent input, the person is typing it and we could see it, so we see what they're typing, and it is not the message that the parent intended. And if you're not pretty savvy in being able to watch the screen and think and talk and do everything that you need to do to be an active participant, you may miss that what was actually typed in the parent input is not actually what you said or what you meant. So that's another reason why it's really good to send it in advance. You want, especially now, I mean, this is what I always recommend anyway, but especially now, you want to document in there what you are doing at home. So if you are spending 2, 3, 6 hours, whatever it is, working with your child online, you want to document that. If your kid is getting private therapies, you want to document that. Anything that you're doing that goes above and beyond whatever they're getting from the school, you want to put it in there, because if your child's making progress, and I've actually talked to lots of parents whose kids are making progress in the online format because mom or dad is sitting at the dining room table and they're doing school with them and helping them. So they're getting all the support that they need. They're having someone who's breaking down everything so that they understand. These kids, so many of them are making truly incremental progress, much more so than they did when they were actually in school, you know, before COVID. So you want to document in there how much you're investing in your child's education and letting them know through documenting it that that's why he or she's making so much progress, because you're pouring so much into them. All right, number 5, invite someone to go with you. Now, that could be your spouse, it could be your sister, it could be a neighbor, it could be an advocate, it could be really anybody that you want, because you have the right to bring anybody that you want. If your child works with a therapist, a lot of times that's pretty good. You could bring that person because they have a good idea of who your kid is, what makes them tick. They could be a valuable person to add to the team, but you have that right. And, you know, I think this is really important, especially if you're thinking that something's going to be discussed that may make you a little anxious. Because again, sometimes when our heads get, you know, kind of like a dog chasing a squirrel, because, you know, you might be attending for a minute, but oh, something just took your attention and then you're off. And some of us have a hard time coming back. So it's really nice when you have somebody else there that can help you, kind of even if they just sit there and they just listen, maybe take some notes. It's always a really good idea. I added this in there, so it's not a step or a tip on the process, but I just think that it's good for you to have your camera on. When I attend IEP meetings, the camera is always on, my camera. The parents' cameras are on. I find quite often that staff at school, their cameras are not. And I have a lot of times when I'll just say, is anybody going to put their camera on? Sometimes the school will say to me, well, we're not required. And that hurts my heart that staff can't have their cameras on during the time that they meet with a parent for their annual IEP meeting. It's not like it's a meeting that happens all the time. And really, I think that it gives off a message to parents that maybe you're not so important, or maybe they have other things going on. And the fact is if you don't see them, you really don't even know if they're sitting there. And most teachers that I know require the students who are at home to have their cameras on because they want to make sure that the child is engaged, that they're sitting there, that they're participating. And so I don't really know or understand why the same wouldn't be expected in IEP meetings. So I encourage you to have yours on. When you come into the meeting, you can say, is anybody going to turn their cameras on? Normally, when I ask that, some or all will put their cameras on. And just let them know that you appreciate that you feel like it's showing you that they're invested in your child's education and their learning and the development of hopefully a good IEP, regardless of whether it's time of COVID or it's not. Don't let the IEP meeting be rushed. This is your meeting. There's no reason to expect an online IEP meeting to last 30 minutes. If your meetings normally go, I don't know, 2 hours, 3 hours, I'm not saying that they have to last that long. I'm just saying that if you're a parent who's going to have a lot of questions and that your meetings usually take a little bit longer, then you should have the same expectation for an online meeting. If the school staff tells you, well, we're only allotting 45 minutes, then you let them know, well, then we'll have multiple meetings because my child is of the utmost importance to me and I'm not going to rush it. I want to make sure that I understand what you all are telling me, what you're using with my child to teach them. And, this is really important. So it's going to take as long as it takes. And so sometimes when you let them know, well, then we'll just have multiple meetings, then they will slow down, make sure that you understand everything, that you have a copy of everything in advance, and that you feel like you're a valued member of the team. So, and if you feel like it's going too fast, you just need to say, you know what, this is going too fast. I need you guys to slow down because I'm lost. There's no shame at all in that. I'm in a lot of meetings where they just forget. They forget that the parent isn't sitting in these every day like they are. So they move really quick. And, for people like me who do meetings every day, that's fine. But for a parent who's doing 1 to 2 IEP meetings a year for their child, especially for you guys who are young parents, this could be a really daunting process. And it's a huge challenge to be able to kind of go along with, oh, this is the present level of performance, and this is the goals and the services and the accommodations. I mean, it's a lot. There's a lot that gets wrapped up into an IEP, especially if it's a good one. And so if it's going too fast, you just need to ask them, you know what, I need you to slow down just a little bit for me. So just one closing thing I wanted to say is, IEPs are like building a tower, one stone at a time. There are very few parents who have that idyllic, wonderful IEP for their child right out of the gate. And that's okay. You can have as many IEP meetings as you want to have. I suggest that the meetings don't go too long. Like if you're sitting at an IEP meeting for 2.5 hours and you guys are still on the present level and you're not getting too far because maybe there's a disagreement, you just need to say, you know what, thank you for your time. I'm done. So we're going to have to come back at another time and finish this up, because you get to a point where nobody is good for each other anymore. And so sometimes it's just It's just a good time just to stop it. And that's why I like the multiple meeting idea of IEPs, because it brings you back to the table fresh, where you're ready to jump off from where you left off with a fresh perspective. Maybe you do a little bit of homework between the first meeting and the second one, but you just come in that way. And just need to know that your child is growing and changing all the time, and so should your IEP. So if you go back and you look at your IEP and you look at the one before and they look pretty much the same, you want to have a little sit down with them and talk about recent assessment materials. Kids who are in school now are being assessed. It's happening. So you got to be able to ask them for the data that supports the goals that they're saying may be mastered or not mastered. Just be able to contribute to your child's IEP meeting. I think that there's a huge amount of value for a child when their parent is invested in the IEP and in their overall learning. And really, I have to say, those are my best outcome kids, when the parents are involved and attend the IEP meetings and give their feedback. All right, guys. All right, so good luck. Check out, the website is there, www.autismfl.org. We're happy to help in any ways that we can. And try to join us for our monthly Across the Spectrum Autism Parent Support Group. We'd love to have you. We'd love to have your feedback into what it is that you're looking for and that you need. So reach out, reach in, and connect with others. And good luck in your upcoming online IEP.